Welcome to the What's Important Now broadcast. In America today, we are witnessing a cultural shift. This is the show devoted to the battle for the soul of our country. Join our host, Tom Sears, as he explains the issues of our day and join the fight to bring values and morality back. Let's join Tom now as he shares what's important now.
And welcome inside the program, What's Important Now. I'm your host, Tom Sears. Thanks for being here with us. Coming to you on this episode with a mission, or I should say maybe it's better to say on a mission, I don't know. But the goal is to awaken hearts, strengthen believers, and speak truth into the very moment that we are living in. That, ladies and gentlemen, is without a doubt battling for the soul of America. Before we begin, I want to remind you to visit legacylivingmedia.com. On the website, you can find all of our media resources and podcasts. What's Important Now, More Than a Song, eventually with my daughter Faith Danielle Be the One. And we now have 2 episodes of New Beginnings Live up as well. So, and it's not just a place to find our media resources. You can contact us there. Contact us through the website. You can partner with us financially if you'd like. All right there online. And we also have a Legacy Living store with some, Christian gifts, and, my books are on there. Books I recommend are on there. There's Bibles, faith-based gifts, Christian t-shirts. You can check it out. But the best part is when you make a purchase, if you make a purchase, not only do you get something meaningful, but you also help support the ministry and this program. So with that, let's get into today's episode. And I want to talk to you about standing in the storm. Ladies and gentlemen, as you are well aware, we, without a doubt, are witnessing a nation that is in the middle of a cultural storm. I mentioned on, I don't know, it's been a few episodes, but I'm working on another book. It's actually, the funny thing is it's the book that I started many years ago. It was actually the first time I ever thought to write a book. I had the idea. It's called The Battle Is On, and it's discussing how I believe we are already involved in the new American Civil War. And it's not being fought with guns. And that's not to say that it doesn't involve violence, but it's a battle over ideals. And America, without a doubt, is in the midst of this cultural storm. We're living in a time where the winds of culture are super, super fierce. I talked about on a previous program that the foundations of morality are shaking. Truth is tossed around like debris in the middle of a hurricane. Ladies and gentlemen, let's be clear. The storm is not coming. The storm is here. It's in our schools. It's in our politics. It's in our entertainment and media. I've talked about social media and digital discipleship. Listen, it's in the very fabric of our national identity at this point. And while some will look at the storm with fear, some of us look at it with clarity. The reality is storms, they don't expose what we dream to be. Storms expose what we already are. And so in the last few years, America has been forced to confront the truth. We've been drifting. We've drifted far from the shore, so to speak. And it was, we used to be anchored, and it was an anchor that held steady. The anchor was, we had the fear of God, but it's been replaced with the fear of man. And truth, of course, has been replaced by feelings, or I should say with feelings. Conviction, what is that? It's been replaced with convenience. And faith is now just political theater. But storms, they reveal foundations. One of the things that's most striking, my wife and I, I should say my family, we will go to the Outer Banks from time to time, and I mean, their beaches are just absolutely disappearing. And it's always interesting to see what the storm reveals. You know, some stuff that's been buried. It may have been a ship that had wrecked, or a home's foundation that had long ago been washed away, but storms reveal foundations. And I've talked about this many times. If the foundation is weak, the house will inevitably fall. And this is a scriptural thing too, right? I mean, Jesus told us in Matthew chapter 7 that it was a wise man that actually built his house on the rock, not on the sand. And right now, God is revealing where this nation has built on rock and where this nation has built on sand. And so if you look at things statistically, a recent nationwide survey, it shows that 74% of Americans say free speech in the country is headed in the wrong direction. 74%. And now we're seeing, and I shouldn't say now because it's actually been happening for some time, but public schools have become battlegrounds at this point for spiritual and moral identity. You have government-appointed commissions that, and school boards in some cases, that are actively debating and in some cases are following through with implementation. Policies that regard religious expression, curricular content, and parental rights. And in one example, for instance, a new law requires public classrooms to display the Ten Commandments, and what's happening is that it's igniting this fierce national debate about the role of religion in public education. I mean, didn't we cross this bridge already? Sure we did. Yes, we did. The reality is, and I said this, when God is removed, something has already replaced him. And so we often see in the mainstream media how Christianity is, bad, so harmful to everyone. Which obviously I believe that the truth is to the contrary. But what we don't hear the mainstream media talking about is how there are actually signs that God is moving in very powerful ways across America, even in the storm. There are signs of awakening and spiritual hunger that the world simply cannot cancel. We've seen this in crucial moments in American history. We think about the Great Awakenings. We talked about it from the perspective of the American Revolution and how pastors were so involved. And so some of the things that we're beginning to see, there's revival gatherings taking place across the nation. Students in multiple states have been gathering around flagpoles and gymnasiums and auditoriums to pray. Now, it's initiated by the students themselves, which is what the law says it has to be, but there's no celebrities, there's no production, it's just prayer. And reports continue to rise to point out the rise of salvations and students carrying Bibles to classes. There's even some hint that there's a spiritual awakening taking place in churches. Churches are beginning to, and let me make this clear. There's a lot of churches that never stopped standing firm on biblical truth, but we're beginning to see a resurgence as, biblical truth and the gospel is being preached without compromise. We're seeing more Christian coaches and teachers and administrators who begin to stand up for their faith. They're reporting increased boldness to pray, to encourage, to live out their faith. And there's even been some cases across the country that many have won legal protections. Legislatures in several states are advancing laws that protect Christian parents and biblical values. In some places of the country, and again, listen, all you have to do is turn on your television. You'll see the other news. You'll see the other things happening. But in the midst of the storm, there is some good stuff. Remember what I said, the storm is going to reveal what parts of the nation are built on rock and what part of the nation is built on sand. So there seems to be this renewed push for laws that support parental rights, religious freedom, and the ability to raise children with Christian convictions and without government interference. We see Christian media, Christian podcasts, Christian voices, they're growing rapidly. Now, of course, there's censorship attempts, yet believers are still rising up. Alternative platforms are thriving. People are searching for biblical clarity. This is real. The storm is real, yes. But so isn't what God is doing. And so, he is shaking what needs to be shaken. And it's not to destroy America, it's to bring America back. That's my belief. So I guess we could say that he's shaking with mercy. He's putting a little pressure on with some grace. Because the storm is a divine wake-up call. This is a moment, not simply a cultural moment, but a spiritual moment. It's a defining moment. And it's what we choose to do in the storm that shapes the future of our country. Now, let me say this. I do believe that we missed a tremendous opportunity with COVID, right? I remember when COVID was happening, one of the things I felt very strongly about was everything's shut down, right? So there's no sporting events, there's nothing, everything's shut down. Everything was shut down. We were stuck at home. And what an opportunity for us to really emphasize the importance of our relationship with God and, of course, with our own families and things like that. But what I saw a lot of people in the church doing was they got caught up in conspiracy theories about COVID and government this and government that. And I don't know if there's truth to it. And it really doesn't matter to me as much as it does that we had an opportunity to really draw closer. And I don't know that we did that. I don't know that we did that effectively. So this is not a time for half-hearted faith. It's not a time for us to run and hide in the shadows and hope that the storm passes, this storm that's this cultural storm in our country. It's a time for courage. Courage is not the absence of fear. It's actually obedience in the face of fear. It's not always loud, but it does refuse to move. And courage will stand up when culture sits down. Or when I should say culture tells us to sit down. Courage will speak when culture says, be quiet. Courage obeys God when the world demands us to compromise. Listen, the Bible is full of people who stood in storms. Daniel, when the nation bowed, he stood. David stood when everyone else ran from Goliath. Esther stood before the king when her people were threatened. And then we got those 3 Hebrew boys that were thrown into the fiery furnace. The early church stood when Rome told them to be quiet. The storm didn't weaken them. The storm revealed them. And ladies and gentlemen, the same is true today. I've said it 100 times over the last several episodes. God's not really looking for celebrities or social media influencers. He's looking for people who will stand for truth, stand with conviction, stand with scripture, and stand up in courage. It's necessary now. Can't wait anymore. All right, before we go any further, I just want to take a moment again to encourage you to visit LegacyLivingMedia.com. That's where you can find every show we produce, What's Important Now, More Than a Song with Brian and Megan, New Beginnings Live, and Be the One. You can listen right there on the website. But listen, it's super, super important. Subscribe on all podcast platforms. Share episodes with friends and family. That's how we grow. And of course, if you'd like to support us financially, there's an option on there for that as well. Again, that's legacylivingmedia.com. Check it out. Subscribe. Share with a friend. Help us continue to push truth, virtue, and moral clarity into a cultural conversation. And of course, if you're listening on FM radio, super important to have access to everything I'm talking about. You have to go visit legacylivingmedia.com. Okay, let's get back to it. So we've talked about this spiritual storm. We've talked about a cultural storm. And if you look at the headlines today, you can see that the battle lines are very clear. Listen, you don't need to be a theologian. You don't have to be a historian or a sociologist to see it. You just open up your news app or turn on the television to your favorite mainstream media outlet. The reality is America's dealing with a crisis of values. It's a crisis of identity. And if you ask me, and maybe I'm just too simple-minded, I think it's a crisis of common sense. Because when truth disappears, confusion will fill the void. Let me give you a few real examples. And I touched on this in the first part. You know, we're now living in a time schools and institutions are beginning to sort of wrestle with basic definitions of morality and identity. I mean, there's a huge debate over things that even 10 years ago would have been unthinkable. You've got parents on one side fighting for transparency. You've got people working in these institutions who are afraid to say the wrong thing. You've got leaders who are caught in, education leaders who are caught in political crossfire. And again, the simplest, most foundational truths. Everything that every previous generation accepted are now controversial ideas. What does that tell us? Well, it tells us the storm isn't just about politics, is it? It's about reality versus reconstruction. And then, of course, you have the hostility that is, wow, towards people of faith. Story after story of employees being written up for sharing their beliefs. Could be coaches who are pressured to stay silent, or citizens who are publicly shamed for holding views that, well, they were mainstream for centuries, but now they no longer are accepted views. Because the moment you say, I believe in absolute truth, you're now intolerant. If you say, I believe in moral responsibility, well, then you are labeled as judgmental. And if you say, I believe in right and wrong, well, obviously that label is outdated. Here's the truth. A society that abandons moral clarity will always attack those who still have it. So prepare yourself. There's also this, and I've talked about this a great deal. There's a collapse of civil discourse, right? So you just look at the tone of public debate today. It's angry, it's loud, it's vicious. It's not because people are necessarily bad. It's because we've lost the common moral vocabulary that used to bind us together. I mean, we are now debating whether or not drug dealers outside of our country are criminals. This is a political debate taking place in our country right now. Listen, when we no longer have shared values, there's no way to have a shared conversation. Thus, storm. There's this growing push for virtue-free freedom. We hear the word freedom constantly. I talk about freedom constantly, but freedom without virtue is absolute chaos. Freedom without responsibility will destroy the very thing that it's supposed to protect. And we see it in real time, don't we? The consequences are unfolding right before our eyes in real time. We see crime spikes, drug epidemics. We have broken families. We have mental health crises. We have an addiction to distraction. These aren't political issues. They're moral issues. They're value issues. They are identity issues. We are living in a time and we are in a nation that has a moral fog. And when there's a fog, it breeds fear. Think about going down the interstate at 70 miles an hour and that thick fog starts and you can barely see in front of your vehicle. It's a little unnerving. But here's what I want you to hear today. We don't have to live in that fog. We don't have to drift with the storm. We can choose clarity. We can choose truth, and of course, we can choose virtue. And if we do that, the storm, by the way, is going to continue to rage. But our footing becomes firm again. So what kind of voice do we need today in this country? What kind of voice do we need here in America? And what kind of voice must you and I be in this moment? I'm not talking about political party spokespeople. I'm not talking about celebrities or social media influencers. I'm talking about ordinary people who have extraordinary courage. Because if you go through history and you take a look, ordinary people with extraordinary courage have brought about tremendous change. We need voices that will once again say, the truth is not hateful. Morality is not judgmental. Virtue, get this, revolutionary concept here, is not old-fashioned. Responsibility is not oppression. And faith is not extremism. We need voices that lift the cultural conversation instead of lowering it. Voices that choose conviction over popularity, clarity over confusion, courage over comfort. We cannot be silent. We cannot be silent and pretend that our silence keeps us neutral. Ladies and gentlemen, your silence is agreement. It is, in fact, surrender. The culture's loud, the storm's loud, the confusion's loud, and yet the truth is stronger than all of it. But it has to be spoken. I'm not talking about shouting it or weaponizing it or politicizing it. Just spoken with strength and with conviction. And this is where your voice matters. And this is where my voice matters. And this is where our generation must rise. Now, as we wrap things up today, let's make this very, very practical. We do not need another celebrity pastor. Sorry, guys. We do not need another political savior. We don't need another angry commentator. What we need is adults who are once again moral, who lead with virtue, who refuse to be intimidated, and who care more about truth than trends. And what is that? What does moral clarity look like in real life? Would we know it if we saw it? Well, let me give you some ideas. Moral clarity looks like this. It's a parent who chooses to talk to their kids about what is right and what is wrong, and about how to treat people. It's about people who refuse to lie to kids just so they can satisfy a policy. It's a coach who teaches discipline and character when everyone else is trying to win the trophy. It's a leader who chooses integrity when the shortcut would be way easier. It's the everyday, ordinary citizen who chooses responsibility instead of entitlement. And it's the man or woman who says, I will not compromise who I am because the culture's confused about who it is. I often talk about the ripple effect, that our decisions are like the puddle with the pebble. The decisions we make, they're not just our decisions, right? They impact others. Moral clarity choices, they ripple. It's the pebble in the mud puddle. There is a ripple effect. Moral clarity choices shape our communities, and they change our future. You see, cultural storms, they don't destroy nations. The winds can blow, the rains can come down, the hurricane-like winds can blow. But cultural storms don't destroy us. Moral confusion does. But here's what else you should know. Truth will restore, virtue will rebuild, clarity will heal, and as I've said, courage will lead. And in this moment, right now, this very moment, it is in fact a moment to reclaim it all. And let me add this because it matters. We talk a lot about the storm, but storms have a way of clarifying our priorities. They give us the ability, or maybe I should say they force us to ask hard questions. When there's a storm, we should ask ourselves things like, or maybe we just do naturally, I don't know, but what do I really believe? Or what am I willing to stand for? What values define me? And then what legacy am I leaving? Because when the winds start howling, you will find out quickly what anchors you and also what doesn't. And you know what I'm seeing right now across this nation? I'm seeing everyday people. I'm not talking about politicians or pundits or platforms, but just ordinary men and women that are beginning to rise up with extraordinary conviction. Parents who are saying, my kids will not be raised by confusion. Educators saying, my classroom will not be surrendered to chaos. Coaches saying, character still matters. Young adults who are tired of being told they have no purpose and no identity and no hope. They're hungry for truth. They're hungry for direction, and they are hungry for something real. And that tells me something powerful. That tells me that the storm may be loud, but the hunger for truth is louder. So we are watching a quiet movement right now, a movement of people who want to live with purpose once again. People who want families grounded in virtue. People who want leaders standing for something. And people who are done with confusion, with noise, and with this moral free-for-all. And this is the part the media never talks about. I'm out of time. Thank you for spending this time with me here on What's Important Now. If you've been challenged by this conversation, encouraged, and you have sort of this new energy for clarity, and I invite you once again to visit legacylivingmedia.com. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast, share it with a friend, consider partnering with us so that we can continue to speak truth into the noise of this culture. We're not here to entertain. We're here to call culture higher. So until next time, stay informed, stay courageous, stay grounded, and what really matters the most, I'm Tom Sears, encouraging you to fight the good fight of faith, contend for the faith. There is a cause. It does matter, and it is important now. Until next time, God bless. Take care.